From education, we jump to agriculture. This is a topic I'm really looking forward to learning about. This is another sector that is being helped by the deployment of technology. Renée Vassilos is Director of Agriculture Innovation with the Nature Conservancy. She joins me now to discuss sustainable advances in this sector. Renée, of all the topics I thought I would be getting into today as my team was putting this program together, this is the one that was the shocker for me. I've got you and then Senator Deb Fischer on after this. And so I'm thrilled because I'm going to be learning a lot more from you in this because, I can talk about the conversations we had earlier because, health, we've done 1,000 events on health. I have done very few events on precision agriculture and how high-tech connectivity, 5G, millennium waves and all of this stuff is coming to change our interaction with food, agriculture, nutrition, and sustainability. So can you just tell me what I need to know? What's the dashboard here?
I'm thrilled that it made the conversation. And actually, what we were just talking about is incredibly relevant, right? Connectivity is a real challenge to actually lighting up the future and technology solutions that could exist for agriculture production. So I guess I would say there is tremendous positive movement and a lot of entrepreneurial spirit and early stage companies that have been focusing, and a growing list of companies that have been focusing on agriculture as a critical sector to drive change. One of the critical underlying factors for why we're needing to drive change is that we've gotten to a place where our agriculture systems are incredibly efficient. It's how we feed the majority of the world with excess calories. It is why we have just incredibly productive and hyper-efficient large-scale farming systems in the United States. But now we're starting to see, for several reasons, a need to possibly shift away from the hyper-efficiency and towards a more responsive system. And we think that there's an incredible opportunity for technology to play a role there. So just to share a couple of reasons why we're needing this shift. One is climate change. Climate change is creating increasing volatility on farm. And so there's a growing need to not just plug and play existing solutions for annual crop production, but to have access to more nuanced, localized, unique solutions to continue to produce at the levels that we have. Another driver around this need for increased responsiveness is consumers. We're starting to see a real shift across middle-class consumers across the whole globe where we're starting to see kind of rapid shifts in diets and what folks are actually interested in eating. And the choices that people are making at home have a tremendous impact on the farm. So that's another reason where we're needing to have more nuance and responsiveness in the system. And then the last is that for, again, climate change mitigation, improving the health of our water systems, biodiversity, we're needing to look at how we're producing and make some pretty significant shifts towards farming systems that are focused on their soil health. And when you're making those shifts, it also requires more nuance. It's not that there's easy button solutions or singular chemical solutions or seed solutions that will be the right fit when you're focusing on building farms for adaptive soil health systems.
Right. So, I know that you work a lot in some of this area. I've been reading about actually regenerative agriculture and topsoils and biodiversity, much of which you just touched on. And I guess, the nation is big. I have a place out in rural Maryland on the Eastern Shore. There are massive farms there, right? I just wonder, and there is a digital divide that still is out there, the availability. I'm just sort of interested if we could kind of talk about the way in which, say, an area I would know, the Eastern Shore of Maryland, large soy farms, but there are a lot of other farms in there, are going to find these next 5 years or so, something where technology is going to give, I mean, I already see it happening out there, but how are we going to see tangible differences in conservation, tangible differences in output, tangible differences in the way what we think is important and prioritize in terms of creating sustainable agriculture along the lines that you said, which is to continue to generate what we need to generate?
Yeah, so I'll share two examples with a 5-year horizon and then kind of the longer horizon where
Okay.
you'll see some of my optimism and excitement about the opportunities. So with a 5-year lens, you will start to see probably autonomous tractors on those larger farms in Maryland. The autonomy allows for a more effective way to introduce precision application of all sorts of inputs. So from a sustainability perspective, it's very important that we become more judicious with where and when we're applying inputs. And one of the benefits of an autonomous system, John Deere just announced that they have are putting out autonomous versions of their 8R series tractor, which in theory will be a more cost-effective way for those large-scale operations to actually implement precision systems. So that's 5 years. It's the existing equipment that's now autonomous. Then if you look, one of the companies in our portfolio that we've invested in is called Swarm Farm. They are reimagining the tractor platform to actually be much smaller in scale and a system where you would actually have a swarm of tractor units out in the field. And this will kind of be that next level of innovation where we can truly shift towards managing potentially large-scale farm operations nearly to the plant level.
Wow.
And then also what that smaller form, more flexible, responsive equipment solution delivers is also an ability to reintroduce trees. So potentially you'll start to see more trees in your Maryland environment, and which is incredibly important for soil health, actually, that you're introducing more diversity back into your farming system. The existing equipment doesn't really allow for, well, as you can imagine, right? If you had trees throughout your system, it would make it very challenging to move through with a very large scale 8R series John Deere tractor. But if you had a series of much smaller units, you would be able to adapt and work within that more complicated soil health building system.
Renee, this is going to be a weird question. I'd love to get together sometime and get my hands in the dirt with you and all this, because I sort of feel like in these conversations, we run the risk of, here we're sitting in cities, some of us, the farming and agricultural world, you work with John Deere, but that there is a distance that has developed over time in some parts of our society. With distance becomes disconnection. With distance also, some people demean others that are on the other side of that line. And I'm going to bring Senator Deb Fischer on in a minute. She's somebody I really respect from Nebraska. She's a cattle farmer. Whether or not, in terms of dealing with some of the deep divides in our society, having both sides of the equation. I mean, you're a climate-concerned farmer, right? So it's a kind of a neat, cool way to bring people in, and whether we're doing enough to kind of remind people that agriculture matters. Is that a fair question?
It's a fair question. And while consumers start to catch up, right? So we are starting to see a growing awareness on the part of consumers about how their food choices actually matter, and having a better understanding of how their food is produced and where it comes from can have an impact. But I'll also say that what's encouraging from our kind of world is that the tailwinds driving change on farm towards building these more adaptive soil health systems no longer have to wait for the consumers to necessarily catch up. We're starting to see biology driving change. So the status quo solutions from fertilizer, both access to, but efficacy, herbicides and pesticides, the efficacy of these solutions, they're facing severe resistance on farm. Also, you're starting to see regulatory pressures around the impact that on-farm activities have on our water systems. And the trade, I mean, it's front and center right now that the reality of our global trading system for agricultural commodities and the effect that will have on farm around what's chosen for planting will be really interesting. And so there is a disconnect that seems to be kind of minimizing, but also I don't think we necessarily have to wait for consumers to catch up before we'll start to see more significant change on farm.
Well, that's heartening. Well, I really appreciate this. Thank you for making my day in this event. Thank you to Renée Vassilos, Director of Agriculture Innovation with the Nature Conservancy. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, Steve.